Good morning. This is Luann from Big Hairy Dog. I'm a trainer here. Today's webinar is about Retail Pro version 8, physical inventory, again, version 8. If that's what you're interested in, please hang on a couple of seconds. I'm going to give some of our people who have signed up a couple more minutes to join us, right? And we should be starting within the next 5 minutes or so. Again, this is Retail Pro version 8. Physical inventory, and we will also be presenting version 9 on November 21st. So if you are a version 9 user, right, that's the webinar you want. This is version 8. All right, I'm going to mute you for a couple of seconds, right, and then we'll begin shortly. All right, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started with our Retail Pro version 8 physical inventory webinar. Welcome, and if you, I have like 6 or 7 of you in this meeting, right? If you have a question, you can use the raise your hand icon, or you can drop it in the chat. I'll try to pay attention to the chat. Right, looks like all of you are currently muted and listening in on your computer speakers, it looks like, for the most part. So I can unmute you if you want to ask a question, just need to know. Right, so again, this is version 8, okay, and you will receive an email after this webinar is finished with a link back to it. We are recording it for future reference. There are also other version 8 and version 9 webinars available on our YouTube channel from our website under videos. There's playlists under there that guide you to the right spot. All right, so to start with, what we're going to do is familiarize you with steps that you need to make sure are completed before you take a physical. Okay, preparing for the PI on our agenda right here. For those of you who have taken physical inventory in version 8 before, these steps can be, it's just like a double check to make sure things are working properly before the actual day of the physical. The last thing you want to do is be fumbling around with settings and things when you've got your crew standing there waiting to take a count. All right, so I'm going to minimize my agenda, right, and we're going to talk about what workstation preferences you need to check in and the other things, steps that you need to do before you take a physical inventory. Planning is the most important step in a physical inventory, making sure that you have all of, that everything's got tags on it that are easily scannable, that your stock is all organized front and back, that you observe the cutoffs, right? So processing cutoffs. If you're a multi-store, make sure that if you're transferring things in and out, that the merchandise has a chance to get to the receiving location and be processed in a Retail Pro before you actually do the count. Same with new vouchers. Sales, pretty obvious. We'll talk about that when we get to the actual physical inventory start, right? But making plans to make sure that everything is in Retail Pro, all the documents are in Retail Pro, so that your on hand is updated and current, so that when you do the count, you're comparing it accurately. Okay, to that end, there's one thing that we advise people, couple things that we advise people to do in advance of the physical, whether you're single store or multi-store. If you are not currently doing a Reconstruct on a regular basis, we would advise doing a Reconstruct at least of your inventory before, in the week before at some point, right? So Reconstruct, if you're not familiar with it, we have webinars on how to do that. I'm just going to, I'm not actually going to do it because I don't want to take the time that it takes. Reconstruct can take, depending on how much you're reconstructing, anywhere from a couple of minutes to 20. Okay, but you really only need to reconstruct your inventory files, right, and the ones down here that start with inventory. That's the main one, but if you're doing it, you know, we would probably recommend that you do this group right here, right, and then all you do to reconstruct is to slide those over into this side. Make sure Reconstruct up at the top says full Reconstruct. Also make sure that everybody is completely out of Retail Pro on all other computers. If you don't do that, your Reconstruct can fail. Okay, so everybody's got to be out of Retail Pro. Check, use your, minimize here, use your options here, user info, to make sure everybody's out of Retail Pro before you do a reconstruct, right? So if you're not familiar with that little tab here, right, under the options tab, user info shows you what workstations are running Retail Pro on this computer. All right, so anyway, like I said, I am not going to actually take the time to do this reconstruct. Where'd my reconstruct go? And I lost my window. Fine. All right, let me just kill this. End. Thanks. And now. Okay. Right. Yes, all of it. Thank you. Okay. Anyway, so if you need to do a reconstruct, you have to pick a time when you can kick everybody out of Retail Pro, reconstruct just the inventory files. If you need help doing that, there's some information on our website about how to do a website, or you can get in touch with one of our techs or trainers, and they can help walk you through. That is something that we do recommend that you do either on a regular basis or, you know, in the week before that you do the physical inventory, just to make sure your indexing is all correct. Another thing that you need to do if you're multi-store, if you are not multi-store, you can skip this step, but in your polling module, I'm clicking on the polling over here on the side, right, on the stations tab, okay, you want to initialize your inventory. Okay, so this is something that you want to do only if you're multi-store. If you're a single store, again, this is unnecessary. And you can do this, you want to do this a couple days ahead of the actual physical inventory, because you want to make sure you have time to get this pulled down to the store. It's not critical that it be done the day before the inventory, in the, you know, anytime in the days before. And all you do to complete this task is to select the store, right? And then over here, select inventory. So those are just what you need, stores and inventory. So if you're doing 3 stores this weekend, you can check up all 3 stores and inventory, right? And okay, and that is going to send your inventory, current state of your inventory down to the store. That's a very important step when you're taking a V8 inventory. All right, I'm going to cancel this. I'm not going to take the time to actually do this right now. Just wanted to show you where that was, right? So reconstruct, if you're not doing it on a regular basis, initialize inventory for sure in the week before, okay? And then you're going to check your system preferences, right? So there's a couple of things that you need to check that are probably okay from the last time you did a physical, but you do want to check, right? So on the workstation, okay, so this is the regular Retail Pro workstation preference. There's one spot that you need to check, and that's in peripherals, okay, portable barcode, right? So if you're using a portable scanner, right, so if you rent scanners from us, if you have your own scanner of any kind that you use for physical inventory, you need to make sure that this setting is correct. Palm is the scanner setting. If you're using one of these devices, let me just show you up at the top here. So if you're using one of these devices that you either own or rent from us, right, that's Palm. If you're using the more updated one, these are ones that these two are a symbol and a JANM that we rent. There's also a JANM that has Foundry Logic on it. If you're using that one, the setting is also Palm for that one. Okay. If you're using the PTs, which are the old oldie but goodie portable terminal unit, that's what PT means. You can rent those from us, or you might own your own. RPro PT is what those are. All right, so you want to check that. If you're using the same type of scanner that you used before, then you're good to go. Okay, and then, so you check that. Okay, and then the other settings that you want to check are actually in the physical inventory tool. Okay, so we advise that you do this in advance of your physical inventory, just to make sure that everything is in place and ready to go. Test the scanner if you own your own. When you rent from us, we usually set up a tech appointment just to make sure the scanners get plugged in and they're set up and ready to go before your physical, right? But if you want to check it, we're going to go into the physical inventory tool, right? So from the main Retail Pro menu, tools, okay, more, and RPro PI. All right, so this is the module where you do the physical, but ahead of time, we're going to go check to make sure our options, right, for workstation preferences are set. So this is the main setting that you want to check. If you're using PT, JANM, any kind of scanner to capture your physical inventory, then you need to have that check set. And then in options and system preferences, we recommend that you use zones. So this setting right here is checked to use zones. Some of you might do a simple physical if your store is small enough and you don't feel like you need to control it in geographic areas to keep everything organized and make sure you count everything. Then some of you do use simple physical, but we recommend zones. Okay, we're going to talk about what a zone is and how it's used, right, in a minute. But this is where you check to make sure that the system knows you're going to use zones, right? If you're using, if you are using an inventory service for your physical inventory, or if you're using, if you're importing your own physical from like an Excel spreadsheet or anything like that, this map might be important. We're not going to really get that detailed in that type of physical, but if you're using a service or you're importing a data file, this map tells the system how to read the map and import your physical. The rest of these options in here, we're not really going to cover here. If you have questions about, answer it well enough that way. All right, so that's all you have to check in your preferences. Okay, so those are all the prep steps as far as Retail Pro goes. Okay, I mentioned that we're going to talk about maps, so I'm going to bring up a PDF here, and if you do not have a PDF that is tailored to the way you do your physical, please email us and let us know, because we'd have these instruction sets written up for entering manual counts, or using the rental scanners that we have, right, or using Foundry Logic, and we have those specifically for V8, and we have those specifically for V9. So if you do not have a document that looks something like this, please let us know. Email and ask us, tell us if you're V8 or V9, right, and what kind of device you use, if any, to capture your physical, and we can email you this document, right, so you'll have it. Right, so the reason that I use this in my webinars is you know, I've got kind of a picture here of how to map your store out. If you're new to doing physicals at all, right, the hardest thing to do is to make sure that you've counted everything once and only once. So mapping out your store doesn't have to be this formal, it doesn't have to be this pretty, it doesn't have to be color-coded, but if you roughly draw a map, right, and define, right, an area of the store, and then you can hand somebody a scanner and say, go do the, you know, the flies, right, which involves this area right here. So you can point on the map, right, you can label your areas if you want to go that far, if your store is really big, right, and you want to put like a sticky note on each of your rounders here in your apparel section that says this is, you know, zone AP1 for apparel 1, AP2 for apparel 2, right, so that it's very clear to everyone, right, what, you know, what constitutes a zone in your store. That's the goal. Right, I should be able to walk into your store and look at your map, right, and say, you know, okay, give me a scanner. I'm going to go count this orange zone, whatever it is, whatever you want to label it, right, and I know exactly what that is. Go count everything, and then come back and dump the scanner. So this is a, you know, you can be as formal as you want or as informal as you want, but the purpose of this is to make sure that you know where all your merchandise is, and that you can send somebody to zone AP1, right, and say, go scan everything in zone AP1 and then bring me the scanner, okay? And then you can write on the map, you know, make a little note, who did it, what time they finished, blah, 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 if you want to go that far. Okay, it's just a way to control things. Okay, so we advise that you keep zones pretty small, right? You should be able to scan a zone in less than a half hour. 15 to 20 minutes is good, right? Because every time you scan a zone, right, if you're using a PT scanner, you can only scan one zone at a time. So you go scan everything in the PT, you come and you read it into Retail Pro, you clear it out, you send it out for the next one. Okay, so both of the scanners that, or all the scanners that we rent are like that. One zone at a time, you go scan the zone, you go dump it out, delete it, and send it back, right? If you have Foundry Logic, right, which are the scanners that we sell with the software Foundry Logic, you can put more than one zone in the scanner at a time. You can label the zones, scan everything in a zone, start a new zone, and you can just keep going through all of these. But we typically recommend that a zone be small, so that if we have to go back to that zone and look for something that was, you know, that had a bad barcode or something like that, that we're not looking through thousands of items to find it. Okay, so other things about prep, right? If you're using scan or using scanners, make sure they're fully charged before day of, right? The PTs have regular old AA batteries. We ship them with new batteries. You should have new batteries on hand. If you're using the Palmer Janum, they have a cradle that charges them, right? So leave them in the cradle overnight, et cetera, right? Other things we already talked about here, making sure everything has a Retail Pro barcode, or if you're using UPCs that they've got barcodes. Organize the stock as much as possible so like things are together, so it's easier to turn the tag and scan, you know, all of that stuff, right? We already talked about this multi-store thing here, right, about making sure that you initialize the file, right? And then that's all your prep work. There are some organizations that will do an on-hand report right when they get ready to do the physical, right? So they have a before on hand, and then they update the physical, and they do an after on hand. You can do that if you want. Some people's accountants require that. And so we just mention that because if you're going to do an on-hand report, you want to do it at the same time that you're actually doing your start physical, right, which we'll talk about in just a sec. Okay, so the other thing that is highly recommended is that you do or make sure that you have an automated backup. So at your main, if you're multi-store, just make sure that you've taken a backup, you know, that day in Retail Pro. If you're not sure how to check, right, or you know, don't know how to do that yourself, you know, email in and talk to a tech really quick. There's you know, a lot of different ways that people do, you know, that kind of thing. So we just want to make sure that you know that it's a good idea to make sure that your backup is current before you go through this process, just in case something really bad happens. Okay, so we are ready. Find my agenda here. Hang on one sec. There we go. Okay, so we talked about all our preparation things, right? So we're ready the day of the physical, right? And so the day of the physical, right, you're going to, first of all, if you're multi-store and you're doing a remote store, okay, you're going to make sure that you've polled, right? So if you're going in to do the physical first thing in the morning before the store opens, right? And another thing I should mention, it is best practice to do your physical inventory when the store is closed. Not everybody has that luxury, but that is the best way to get the most accurate physical. It is you know, highly recommended that you do your counts when you're not having to serve customers, or that there's a chance that the merchandise that you're trying to count is being sold before you get to it. Okay, there are people who you know, have to deal with the situation that I just mentioned, where things are being sold while they're trying to count them, and that does create some question marks and extra work, right? So if at all possible, you should be counting when the store is closed. All right, so if you are counting first thing in the morning before the store opens, you need to make sure that the polling actually completed the night before. Okay, so you can check that at the main, right? Make sure that you can see the sales from yesterday. Okay, if you're not sure, you could just quick poll, okay, from the remote to make sure that the everything from yesterday got up to the main. Okay. If you are doing your inventory or counting your physical at the end of the day, then you want to make sure that after you're closed for business that day, that you quick poll, okay, to get your sales up to the main, right? So that the on hand at the main and the on hand at the store are matching. Okay. The reason that's critical is that when you count a remote store, okay, something other than the main, we are the on hand at, you know, for the store, at the store is what we're comparing our counts to. Okay, and if the on hand at the store for the store is not the same as what the main has for the on hand, then you are, you know, not going to get an accurate result. Okay, so the polling and the initializing is all important in this sequence, right? So if you have a remote store, you're going to initialize inventory from the main to the store sometime in the day or two, you know, before the physical, right? You're going to make sure that you've pulled everything out of the store, okay, up to the main, before you tell the computer that you're starting the physical. All right, so all of that has to do with remote stores only. Okay, so for those of you who are single stores, you know, then all of that isn't really necessary. At a single store, you just close the store if you're taking the physical at the end of the day, right? And then you're going to go from the inventory, from the Retail Pro main menu, right? We're ready to start the physical. You're going to go to Tools, okay, and More, okay, and you're going to go to RPro PI, right? So this is the little executable program that allows us to do physical in version 8. Okay, we were in here to check our options. So that's all done. We've tested our scanners. Everything is organized. Everything is ready. And we're at the store getting ready to count. We've quick polled if this is a remote. Okay, and we come in here and we go to physical and stores. All right, and then say new. Okay, and pick the store. Right, so if you're multi-store and you're at a remote, you're only going to see the store you're in. Okay, and so that's important. I'm here, I'm at a main, right, and I've got all bunch of stores here, right? So at the store, right, you're only going to see the store that you're in. Okay, at the main, you'll see all of these, and that'll come into the discussion you know, after you do the update at the remote. All right, so I'm going to pick a store. This step makes what we call the snapshot or the freeze or whatever you want to call it. What it does is it makes a file of every item in your item list and how much is on hand in this location. Okay, so inside the PI tool, if I were to go to the inventory display tab here, right, this is what my system thinks I have on hand, right, for all of these items. Okay, I haven't counted anything yet. Okay, so my difference is everything I own. But just to show you, this is your freeze, right? So everything in here, right, if you have the item on hand, right, that's what the system thinks you have. So once you have done that freeze, okay, now you're going to go to the zones, right? And, you know, everybody's counting, right? So I'm going to go to the zones tab, okay? And your physical process now, if you're using scanners, right, is to go out. If you're using the rental scanners, right, or you're using these type of scanners that you either own or the PT, which is an older looking version of a scanner. All of these things are one zone at a time. Okay, so you would go scan everything in the zone, right? The person would come back to the workstation where you're controlling all of this, right? You would plug in or hook up the scanner to the workstation. Okay, you would say new. You're in zones, right? Physical zones. You say new. Okay, you tell me what store. Okay, it's only going to be one if you're at the remotes. Okay, tell me what zone. So let's say in our previous example, we had zone AP1. The zone name has to be under 5 characters. Okay, and it has to be unique, right? So you can have AP for apparel 1, you can say rounder 1, you can say floor 1, you can, you know, define them any way you want. Keep it under 5 characters. You've got a place to put notes, so you can put the people who counted it. You know, it will have a timestamp on it when we import it, so that's not strictly necessary, but you can put any kind of notes in here that you want. Okay, and that's going to bring you to this display, right, where your choices are import the file, manual entry, which means I'm just typing or scanning items directly into Retail Pro, right? Most of you, hopefully, are going to be using a portable terminal, okay, and your portable terminal should already be hooked up to the cradle, right, or the cable, whatever you're using, right? And then when you click on portable terminal here, it's waiting for the message that you're downloading, right? If you are using a Palm, you're going to have a little red and blue circle down here that says hot sync, right? And if you use those things before, you know, you can press the button on the cradle, right? There's a double arrow button on the cradle, or there's usually a screen icon that you can tap on that downloads the file, right? So We do not have that, hooked up to show, right? But you will download the zone, right? As long as you get the zone downloaded. Okay, I'm going to fake download here. So I'm going to actually enter some items as if I were scanning them, just so I can create a zone, right? But with the portable terminal, you would press the button on the terminal that says I'm downloading, right? And that would grab those files, right? And show you, let's see, scanned, right? And then the system would look like this, where it's got the items that you scanned and how many you scanned. Okay, so I've created a zone here, okay, with 3 different items in it, right? And if you had downloaded these from a scanner, then you want to delete the scans out of the scanner and send it back out to go get the next zone according to how you've structured your map, right? So that is the over and over and over again process. If you're using scanners and you go out and you scan the next zone, right? The next zone, right? So here's my thing. Nope, that's not it. Here's my thing right here. Okay, so here's my thing, here's my map, right? So I have scanned this zone. I just put a checkbox on it or a note or whatever, right? And I hand the people the scanner and say, go do this one, right? The one right next to it, zone whatever, AP2, right? So they go scan that one, they come back, you download it, you delete, you send them out to do the next one, right? So over and over and over and over and over again. So I'm going to create another zone here. So I'm going to say new. Okay, and it's same store, and this is AP2. By the way, some people like to pre-create their zones according to their map, so they can always have the zone ready to go. There's pros and cons to that. Okay, the pro is that it's ready. It might save you a little time. The downside, right, is that you might pick the wrong zone to load your stuff into, causing confusion. Okay, so if you prefer one way over the other, keep doing it the way you're doing it. Don't change. If you have problems with the way you're doing it, maybe spend a little bit of time with one of us trainers or techs to maybe change the way you're doing it just slightly, right? So that it gives you a better result. Okay, but ultimately, right, you have a zone, right? You download the stuff into the zone. And then you delete out of the scanner, you send it back out, and they do another zone. So we've got zones 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to do one more. All right, so zone AP3, right, manual entry. Okay, and then while we're talking about this, if you have some stuff that is, sitting on a workstation that's close to the merchandise, like a jewelry counter or something like that, you can potentially scan a barcode, right, in manual entry here. So manual entry, scan a barcode, and you can also set this radio button where it says quantity for current item. Okay, so if I scan a barcode here, right, it's going to stop and ask me how many. Okay, instead of assuming 1, right? If it assumes 1 and if you press enter, it'll accept 1. But if you really have 10, right, you can enter 10 with the least amount of keystrokes, right? So this is a way that some people take their physicals, right? Either by having the merchandise close to an actual Retail Pro workstation. Okay. The other way that people use manual entry, right? And if you're not aware of this, you know, I just wanted to point this out, right? In the inventory count sheet area, let me see if I actually have it on here. Yeah, no, I don't think this is on here. Let me just, we're going to get stuck here. Woohoo. Probably ought to cut that down a little bit, right? Yeah, okay. It's going to be mad at me. Okay, we'll see if that ends up producing something. If not, I'll kill it and we'll start over. Okay, so you can, you know, enter things into a zone by downloading a portable terminal. You can enter things into a zone by importing, right? So if I go to scanned and add counts here, I can use an import file either from Washington Regis Inventory Services or an Excel file that you happen to have, and use a zone, right, or a map, sorry, that tells the system how to read the file, right? Or you can enter counts with manual entry, right? And until you merge the zone, you can keep adding to it, right? So a lot of people, one person will sit at the front counter with the, you know, be the downloader of choice, okay? But in between, right, they might be entering counts off a sheet, an inventory sheet, count sheet. Sometimes, like, you know, people will count their back stock, and they'll have a count sheet or something taped to the box, and they'll lift all those sheets, and somebody's job is to sit and enter those, right? That can happen. And all you need is the item number and the quantity in order to do that. Okay, so those are the methods of getting your physical inventory entered into Retail Pro. Let's see what's going on behind my thing here. Yeah, still thinking. Okay, got a low memory machine here, so we'll just let it think. Okay, so as you finish, one thing, when you're reading scanned files, sometimes you might scan a barcode that's not actually recognized by Retail Pro. Either it's not a UPC that you have in the system, or it's not a Retail Pro item number. So just briefly, I wanted to cover what that process looks like. Looks like it's getting ready to display something. Because I'm not actually using a scanner here, I can't actually physically show you how it works in Retail Pro, but my handy instruction manual here, right, has a good little section on how to deal with errors, right? So I'm going to scroll down to where that is, right? So we're past here, we're entering zones, everything's awesome. Okay, all right. And here's my handling scanning errors. Right, so if you're using a scanner, it's a portable scanner, you might scan something that is not recognized by Retail Pro. If that happens, when you download the counts into Retail Pro, you'll get an error message that looks something like this. Some items were not found in inventory and moved to the error view. All right, so your only choice here is to click OK. All it's doing is notifying you that, okay, of that. And what you're going to do is you're going to go to the error display, right? So in version 8, right, the zone that has an error is going to have a red dot next to it, like it shows here, right? Big, vibrant red dot, right? And you're going to go to the errors section, right, of that zone. Okay, so you can see the errors button here on the side, right? So if this zone had bad scans, right, you'll see that there, right? And when you highlight that zone and go to errors, you will see what I call an error sandwich, right? Because if you look here, right, you're going to have something, okay, that is unrecognized, so that line in the middle, right, where it says 9989979, we scanned that. That's not a Retail Pro recognized barcode, right? So it's either not a Retail Pro item number, or it's not a vendor UPC that's in the system, right? So it says you counted one of them. So over here under scan quantity, you got one, right? But I don't know what it is. But what it does is put this in between, right, things that are recognized. So next to, okay, the Caro vase or the bulb setup cube is going to be this barcode. However, whatever you scan, that barcode, right? It's in between these two things. So you can go out to the floor, find this thing, and figure out what it should have been, what Retail Pro code it should have been. All right. So, and then from there, right? There's two different ways that people handle this. One, if they find it, right, and they they don't have time to research it right that minute, okay, then what you can do, right, is you can delete that error, right, out of the scan, right? So, and I don't think it shows it up here, but in this display, in the error display, there is a delete, right? So if you have an error, right, you can highlight the error and click delete. Okay, and if you delete all the errors in that zone, right, then the red dot will go away. Okay, if you delete the error, okay, then you need to put this item in somehow, but you can set it aside, right, and deal with it at the end, right, and look up all the errors, right. So here, okay, you can print. Excuse me. You can print a document that will show you what the errors were and what they're next to it, so you can take it out to the floor. Okay, but essentially you either have to pull the item, put it aside, and delete the error, or fix it inside the zone. Right? If you pull that item and it's just, oh, we just scanned the wrong barcode, and the Retail Pro item is on it, right? Actually on it, then you can edit. Well, it'd be easier to show you on this, right? You can actually edit this item number column, okay, in right in the error display, right? So you can edit this, give it the right item number, right, and then basically that resolves the error and you're done, right? So if that's not easy or quick, pull the item out, delete the bad scan out of that zone, put it in a pile, right? And then you're going to enter those things later. All right, so you have to address all the red dots before you can finish the physical, right? So however that works time-wise for you, right, you're going to need to get rid of those red dots before you can merge. All right, so that's something that happens when you use portable scanners. It's not going to happen if you're using a scanner that's directly connected and you're doing manual entry, because it's going to check right here and now, right, to see if that item that you're scanning is valid. I don't think that's a valid number, so it should yell at me, right? Okay, so if you're scanning in here, you're going to know right away if it's a bad scan. If you're using import file or portable terminal, either of those might have bad scans, and they need to be addressed before you're finished with physical. All right, so if you have items like a pile of trouble things that you're going to enter later, right, you could put a good tag on them, scan them all into a scanner and download them. Okay, so that is one approach. Almost all the time, people will have some zone, right, that they're doing manual entry, right? So you can create, well, let's just call it errors. Error. Right. Geez. Okay, so almost everybody will have like a thing, right, that are a zone that they put in all their leftovers, right? The things that wouldn't scan, the things that had damaged barcodes. You usually have at least a small pile, right, where you can enter those things. Okay, and have them set aside, and you can go in and out of this and add to it all through the inventory. All right, so you've gone through, you've counted everything, and when you are finished, right, counting all the zones, right, you need to start looking at your discrepancies. Okay, so you can merge these one at a time, right? So there's a merge zone over here, so you can highlight that zone and click merge. Okay, so you can merge as you go if you want. So you know you're totally done with that zone, there weren't any errors, you feel good about it, right? You can merge the zone. Okay, that gives you this lovely blue dot so it knows you're done. Now, if you mistakenly merge the zone, you can unmerge it and add to it if you wish. Okay, if you get to the end, right, and you want to merge everything that's left, or you want to merge all at the same time, then your best option is this mark store, right? So mark store, that puts a green check on every zone that has not been merged yet. Okay, and when that happens, you can, when you use the green check, then you can merge all the items with a green check, right? If I didn't want to do this one, right, I can unmark. I can only unmark store here. Yeah, okay. So I can only mark the whole thing at this point. So mark all, right, and then merge everything that's marked with this button right here, merge marked. Okay, all my lovely blue dots. Now, what that means is that I can now go look at my discrepancies against my the start physical that I did. Now, because I've only counted, 3 or 4 things in here, my discrepancies are going to look like they're a mess. Okay, but what I did purposefully was keep the first few items on my discrepancy list just so we can see what that looks like. Okay, so once you are merged, right, you're going to go out of the zones area, right? So if I use the Retail Pro back button and I go to stores, okay, here I can see that I've got counts, right? I've counted a total of 17, 8 unique items, okay, in my count of 17. All right, so if I go back to stores and I look at my discrepancy, right, this shows me in store physical what I've actually counted, right? So this is what Retail Pro thought I started with. That's my count, right, in all my zones because I merged them all, okay, and that's my difference, right? So if I did nothing, right, I'm going to create an adjustment here for -9 units, -8 units, -8 units, et cetera, et cetera. All right, so at this point, most people would look to see what my worst discrepancies are. Okay, and usually if you've been with Big Hairy Dog for a while, you're going to have some kind of printout that's going to help you organize this, right? So inside the discrepancy tab, if you hit print, you should see something that looks like this, right? If it has BHD in the front of it, this is one of our forms that we've created. You might have your own, but essentially we have one that's organized by department or organized by vendor, or there's an item version here. That's probably that one. Because that's roughly how their floor lays out. So if they need to go look at the accessories or look at the shoes or, whatever widgets, right? Their floor is probably roughly organized in that direction. Okay, so if I click the OK button here, and that is totally the wrong printer. And let's preview and see what happens here. I don't know if my actual Retail Pro ever got to the point where it was going to give me a print. So we'll see. This is probably going to take a while. There we go. Okay. Okay. All right, so this item report, I'm pretty sure has the totals at the bottom, so I'm just going to go to the bottom, okay, and show you that. Some of them have the totals at the top. Oh, we're still accumulating. 400, 500 pages. Keep going. Page 615 of 7, 8, 9. All right, well, let's wait for that. Okay, go back to the top. All right, so this is organized by department, right? It's only going to show you the things that are different. Okay, it's not designed to show you everything in your inventory, whether you counted it or not, whether you own it or not. It's designed to show you what's different so you can focus in on what is wrong. Okay, so it's going to be divided up by department, right? So you can take this and go to your beverage department, right, and figure out why you didn't count these 10 Z Hills, whatever, 24-ounce things, right? So use this to figure out where you might have miscounted. Okay, it looks like we're at the end. Yeah, okay, so most of our physical inventory differences will have some kind of total that'll show you how much you were over and how much you were short, right? And then the net of the two. Okay, so down here, this bottom box, right, this is our total on hand. This is what I counted, so I'm like way short, severely so. But this is, you know, your first yardstick, right, as to where you are as far as the count goes. Now, if you're at a remote store and you're multi-store, right, some people choose to take a quick peek at their discrepancies at that night of the inventory, just to make sure that they didn't miscount something major. Okay, you're tired, but if you take a look at this and you're off by 100 of something, right? You and somebody, you know, maybe, you know, fat fingered the count or something like that. You can go say, okay, so let's go recount this thing real quick, right? Because I know we're only supposed to have 10, right? So you go verify that, and then you can fix that in your counts that night without having to, you know, deal with it in the morning. You can deal with it in the morning, right? But we usually, you know, find that most people will take at least a very quick look at their discrepancies if they're in a remote store or while they've got everybody there to recount if they need to. Okay, and if you decide that evening that you want to change your counts, okay, the best practice, right, is to go back to your zones, right, and if you find that you miscounted this stuff in this zone, okay, then you want to unmerge. Okay, if you don't have your unmerge, you can turn it on. Where's my unmerge? Merge. Oh, I might need to be in stores. Yes, I need to be in stores. Okay, so if I'm in stores, right, I've got merged zone list here in stores. Okay, and then there's an unmerge in that, right? So if I miscounted, you know, AP1 for whatever reason, or needed to correct a count, right, in AP1, I can unmerge it. Okay, then I can edit it, right? Probably have to go. Probably have to go to the zones tab. Sorry, go to the zones tab. Now I don't have a blue dot there, so I can actually go into scanned, add counts, or I can directly edit this. Right. So let's say, for instance, this should have been 10. Okay, I can edit this, change the count. Come on. Change the count. Okay, what have I got here? Zone AP1. Okay. Edit. Scanned. All right, I might have a permission problem of some kind here, as I should be able to edit this. But push comes to shove, right? You can go to add counts here, right? And say if I needed, 9 more in my item 15 or 14, right? I can enter 14 here, right? And add 9, close it, right? Oh, I was in the wrong column. Sorry about that. Okay, so scan quantity is the one you want to edit, right? So if I'm going to edit this, right? Okay, edit the scan quantity, right? Or add counts. You can subtract, right? So I can put in a -1 here, right? If I needed to take some out. Okay, now this is going to net out 1 for 13. I don't actually want to do that. I just want to show you that it's possible. Okay, so if my counts weren't right in this zone, I can unmerge it. I can edit the scan quantity. Okay, save it. Okay, and then remerge it. Okay, so come back to here, right, and merge it. Okay, so now that's been altered. Okay, remerged, and I go back to my stores tab, and I go back to my discrepancy. Okay, and so these items right here that I just edited, right, now they're counts. Now I'm over 1, right? So I had some of those in another zone, right? But anyway, you get the drift, right? We always recommend that you do your edits in a zone because then it's auditable, right? Some of you in version 8 might be used to just dropping in here, right, and editing the count, right? And that is something you can do, but I don't have an audit on this, right? If we had to go back and figure out how that changed from 11 to 10, I wouldn't be able to tell you. Okay, so we don't recommend doing that. Those of you who are used to doing it, I'm not going to tell you to stop as long as it's not causing any audit problems. Okay, but we do not recommend doing what I just did. Okay, so right, you go through and you look at your discrepancies. If you're at a remote store, check the big discrepancies to make sure you didn't miscount. Because ultimately, whatever you have counted, right, is going to become your new on hand, right? So if you didn't count accurately, then you don't have an accurate on hand. Okay, and so check those big things the night of. If you're just too tired, you can go home without updating. Okay, now if you're at a remote store, okay, when you go to finish this inventory, right, you will have a button on the side that says prepare PI and not update. Okay, that is marked in our instructions right here. We're past merge, we're past looking at discrepancies. Okay, blah, blah, da, 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 da. All right, so if you are at a remote store, what happens with the physical inventory counts is you do your physical inventory, you enter your counts in the store, you can look at your discrepancies, you can work on them there if you want, okay, but in order to update the physical, those counts have to be pulled up to the main. Okay, so most of your newer versions of Retail Pro, instead of update, okay, it might say prepare. Okay, so at a store, right, if you go to update, I am in Retail Pro, and oh look, got my inventory count sheet. All right, so back to this inventory count sheet thing, right? If you use count sheets out of Retail Pro, they can be configured so that we can put the item number as a barcode. So you can scan it and enter the count, scan it and enter the count. With version 8, because the item numbers are generally small and simple, right, that you might not need the barcode. But if you're using count sheets from in Retail Pro, or if you're just, you have your back stock and you just have, item number, and list of the item numbers and a list of the quantities taped to the outside of the box, and you're just going to lift those sheets and type them in, then that is one way to pre-count things, right, and have it ready, right? If you were to type these into your physical inventory zone, right, you would use, so I'm going to create a new zone, call it backstock. Okay, and you would use manual entry. So you would take that count sheet, right, change to quantity for current item and say, I have item number 5, right, and I have 10 of those. Okay, no new PC, so not item number 5. How about item number 10? Yeah, I have 10 of those. Right, great. All right, so let's see. So I think I have 10. So 6, 7, and 8. Let's try those. Physical. Okay, so item number 6, I have 10. Okay, item number 7, I have 10. Item number 8, I have 10. Right, so as I explained before, you can use the manual entry to either scan a barcode and tell me how many, right, or you can use a count sheet, right, to have the item number. Somebody can go write counts on this, right, and so you can type it in and tell me how many. All right, so we're going to get out of that. And then we have to get out of this, because when you update, nobody else can be in Retail Pro, right? So you have to get back to the main menu here, right? And any other workstations that are in Retail Pro at this location, you have to get them out. Okay, so we've got this backstock area that we've entered. We're going to merge it. Okay, go redo our discrepancies if we need to do that, right? But let's say that we're totally done doing that. If you're at a remote store, the update, right, is just sending the counts up to the main. If you're at the main, the update means I'm done. I'm ready to update my discrepancies. All right, so update, okay. If you're at a store, right, you're only going to see your one store. If you're at the main, you might see more than one. Okay, you can update more than one at the same time at the main. Okay, if I'm at a remote, you're only going to see the one. I'm going to say next. Okay, very important, right? And why this is not the default, we couldn't get anybody to explain it adequately. But when you're doing a full physical, make sure you are changing update on hand to all items. This is the most common mistake made in version 8 PIs, right? They forget to change from only items with a physical count to all items. If you do not change this, then only things that you counted will update. Okay, so if you had a -1 on hand in Retail Pro and you're out of it and you didn't count it, it's not going to make an adjustment to bring that on hand to 0. Okay, if you have something where there are, the system thinks you have 6 and you didn't really have them, okay, in your counts, right, it would not change the on hand for that item. Okay, so make sure if you're taking a full physical, you change to all items. Very, very, very important. Okay, next, right, and then if you're prompted, right, make sure you do a reason. This I have to backdate here, so bear with me. And if you're on a remote, you won't see both of these prompts, but if you're at the main, you will, right? So the update, right, at the main, right, is going to make an adjustment for whatever the differences are between what you counted or your snapshot, or I'm sorry, what Retail Pro thought you had, your snapshot, okay, and your counts that you counted in your zones and compared. So anything that's different is going to get a big old adjustment. Okay, and then this looks like it's the last prompt, but it's not. Okay, the last prompt is this filter, right? Make sure if you're doing a complete physical inventory that you clear this filter. Hit it a couple times just to make sure. If you're doing multiple stores, you will see multiple filters. So make sure clear all, clear all, clear all, right? Okay, I'm not going to okay here because I don't want to cancel or zero out my physical inventory even though I'm on demo mode, right? So I'm going to escape out of here or just close it. So I did not update, but if you're at a remote, right, you do the update or prepare, right, and then you quick poll. All right, so if you are not familiar with quick poll, you know, at the store, you should be. Most of the time, there's going to be in your polling window here, there's going to be an icon over here, right, that says quick poll. This is actually not set up for polling, but that quick poll, right, will prepare your process out, right, your physical, send it up to the main, right, and so at the store, right, if you're multi-store at the store, now you're done, right, you've prepared it, you quick polled it, you get to go home. Someone at the main, right, is going to be processing in that count, right, either as soon as they get it or it'll process in the next time the main process is in, right, and they will automatically see the physical count, right, in the PI tool at the main, right, so it'll look like this. If you have multiple stores, there's going to be multiple store rows here, okay, and then at the main, you are the one that actually creates the adjustment, okay, by doing an update, right, so you could still change alter the counts, right, so if you look at your discrepancies and there's something still that you want them to recount, you have them recount it, they give you the counts at the main, and you do the additions to the zones here, right, or create a new zone, or manually edit the store quantity here, right, although this is not what we'd recommend, okay, but it is something that a lot of people in 8 are used to doing. So once you are satisfied that you've done the best you can, right, and you're ready to update at the main, right, it looks exactly like what I'm going to show you here, right. Make sure you click all items. You got to change that. It's not the default, okay, and then a physical, okay, and then okay, right, and then make sure after you click this finish button that you clear the filter. All right, and then that is done. When you update, okay, it goes into an archive file, right? If you're using remote stores, it's not in the archive file at the remote, right? Is in the archive file at the main, wherever you're actually doing the adjustments, right? So this is the main menu of the PI tool. Here's the archives, okay? And I also always show people this, right? Because if you call us in a panic because you updated something and it was incorrect, right? We have the files, right? We can go to the archive, stores, right? Here's all the physicals that you've updated over time unless we've chosen to remove them. So it's there, right? We can still look at a discrepancy list. So here's one that I dealt with probably the last time I did this webinar. If I look at my discrepancies here, it's still the same way it was when I updated this physical. Okay, so it shows me what I started with on 6/5/2019, shows me what I counted and what my differences should have been. This is current on hand, right? Which in this analysis really doesn't mean anything, right? However, the state of the inventory or the PI when you update it is preserved. So you can go back, you can print it, you can do whatever. We can even unarchive it, okay, so that you can redo it. And you don't want to do that unless you've got a tech from here over your shoulder, right? Because there might be easier ways to fix whatever your problem is. So if you find yourself in a panic because your inventory went completely wrong, like I said, most often the culprit, right, is I forgot to change. Okay, store next. I forgot to change this, right? And if that happens, what we do is we unarchive it, right? And then we repost it, and we click all items this time. So it can be as simple as that, but there are mitigating factors. So don't try to do that without having a tech check over what you're doing to make sure that you're not going to make your problem worse by unarchiving and re-updating yourself. All right. Now, after you've done the update, what a lot of people's accounting people want them to do is another one of those on-hand reports. Remember, we did an on-hand report at the the start, and then do an on-hand report after. Okay. If you're a single store, right, there's not a lot of rules with that. You do the update, you do an on-hand report, and whatever the difference is between the first one you did and the second one you did, that should match your adjustments, right? Because when we do that update, right, we get a big adjustment document, big adjustment memo. And I am not sure where I might have one, so I updated that in June. Let's see what I got here. Quantity physical documents 6.2. Let's see if I got a 6.5. Anyway, in the adjustment documents, you get a big adjustment. This looks like one. So it's keeps track of how much was different. So we can always run a report, right, on the physical adjustments that were made themselves based on this actual adjustment, right? So some people like the before and after on-hand report. If that's something you've been doing, just keep doing it. As long as somebody's asking for it. If nobody's asking for it, then don't do it just so you have it. But one thing, if you've been around version 8 for a long time, you know that it is hard to get on hand as of a certain date out of the system, right? So if you think you're going to need an on-hand report, you run an on-hand report right when you do the start physical. I would even run that same on-hand report right before you do the update, and then right after you do the update, and just keep all of those just in case anybody cares. Okie doke. All right, so for those of you, right, who made it through this whole thing, a lot of people, right, tuned into this just for, a refresher, right? This webinar will be probably posted and emailed by tomorrow if you've got an inventory coming up. Let me see, let me get this back up here, right? If you've got an inventory coming up, right, and you have rental scanners, you will have a chance when the tech appointment is to install the scanners to review anything that you still have questions on about the physical, so take advantage of that. If you are not renting scanners and you have your own, just start verifying your scanners equipment or the procedures and everything ahead of time so you're not in a panic when the actual day of the inventory comes, because that's what we find is people wait till the last minute, right, and then they're trying to get their equipment to work and they're in a panic, and the board is busy, and then it becomes very stressful, right? So take the stress out of your inventory prep way ahead of time. Make sure you know what you're doing, ask questions, do a run through, right, if you need to, and make sure that you're confident on the day of your inventory. Also, I wanted to mention that if you're new-ish to the inventory process, we have a program called Rent-A-Tech, where if you are doing something like overnight on a Saturday night, on a Sunday or whatever, and you want to have a tech reserved for you in case you have problems, you can pay a fee, right? And it's on the weekends, I think it's 2 hours but you have, plus whatever time you use, you have that tech at your disposal to answer any questions or help you out with anything that you have a problem with during your physical, after hours, etc. Right? So we do have techs here on the weekends, 9 to 5 on Saturday, that's Pacific time, and 9 to 2 on Sunday, that's also Pacific time. You know, any questions when you're actually taking the physical or trying to get an update done is an automatic down call. So you go to the head of the list, we just want to make sure that during this stressful time that you have the help that you need. So please review the webinar. If you don't have this type of sheet, okay, let us know how you actually do your counts, whether you're renting, have your own devices using an inventory service, etc. And we'll get you the right document here that covers all the information that's in this webinar that's a little more tailored to the way you do a physical. Okay, so take advantage of all the tools that we have to make sure your physical is successful. All right, if you still have further questions, you know, after all of that, right, email in. Oh, there's somebody with a question. Question. Where'd my question pane go? Chat. One sec. Okay, Mark, I'm trying to find the question here. They changed the way we do. Send, copy. Okay, where is it? All right, so Mark, I'm sorry if you still have a question. My question pane seems to have disappeared. So to Mark, I'm dropping into the chat, Mark. You can type the question into the chat if you're still there, and I'll read it to the group. I'm not sure why my question pane disappeared. All right, it doesn't appear like Mark's still paying attention. If any of you have any lingering questions, oh, there it is. Hey, I found it. Okay, so, all right, so here's Mark's question. He has 2 inventories in Retail Pro. Run as a store, the other's an off-site warehouse 1 mile from the store. Merchandise goes back and forth daily. Doing PI in the store is easy. You don't use zones. They scan by item and update each department. Scanning the warehouse is more difficult because there's no computer. That would be. Last time I did a PI there, I was able to put a copy of my whole Retail Pro system on the workstation, bring it to the warehouse, do the PI, create the adjustment file, copy it back to the main server, and update the warehouse. Does this make sense to you? The problem is that I do not remember which files to copy back to the server and what folder they are in. Okay, that is rather strenuous, it sounds like. Okay, put a copy of your whole system on a workstation, bring it to the warehouse, do the PI, create the adjustment file, copy it back to the main Retail Pro server, and update the inventory of the warehouse. Okay. Boy. I would probably want to work through that, you know, individually with a tech. There might be an easier way to do this than what you've described here, right? So let me see if I can unmute you, Mark. Can you hear me, Mark?
Hello?
Yeah, you can hear me?
Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, okay. So your warehouse is a remote?
It's just a second. I did this in the past. It was quite easy. I just don't remember exactly what I did.
Okay. So do you remember? So you create the adjustments, right? And so you have the adjustment memo, file, right, for the month.
Right. When I did the update, it created a file or a couple of adjustment files, and maybe it was one for each department. I don't remember. And I copied it over. When I brought the computer back, I copied it over to the server. And I did a regular update. It worked fine.
Okay, so then you probably were creating the PI, right? So let's wait, I don't know. Close this. There we go. Okay, so I'll just do an update here on mine because I really don't care about the data in here. Right, so you would actually do the update, right?
Yes, on the workstation.
Okay, so you would update, right, and do this, and all items, and with the warehouse, you did everything all at once, all in one big PI?
It was one PI, but it was done on separate categories. In other words, category 1, and we would update that. Category 2, we'd update that until we finish doing all the categories that are in the warehouse.
Okay. So you would do, when you would do the categories, you would do it like, you would do it like this. 17, 5. Okay, so you would do it by department this way?
Yes.
Filter to the department? Okay.
Yes.
So you would filter to the department. Let's say we'll just take one of these little guys, right? So filter to the beverage department, say OK, right? And it would create a file, right, that just had the beverage department stuff in it, right?
Right.
Okay. So we would look at, that's not what I want. So here, Retail Pro, PI Tool, right? PI tool. Okay, so let's see what we got. Okay, so does this look familiar? Right, this.
It was a few years ago. Nothing was familiar.
Say that again. Sorry.
I did it a few years ago, so nothing was familiar.
Yeah, I can't. It's hard for me to understand you. So I've got, this file. Okay, that contains and would you rename these?
I don't remember.
Don't remember. Okay. Yeah, I have not done anything that tricky. Let me look and see what's in the archives here. Now, this might be it, right? Because, these files, right, are the archives, and they're going to be uniquely identified by, by each time you update. Okay, so probably what we should do is, talk offline. So what company are you with?
Balance. I'm gonna have to call you back.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm saying is, email in and we can, talk directly, or I can look up and see, if there are notes on how you did this last time, because you probably have worked with tech over time, right?
I just spoke to somebody and somebody told me how to do it.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying, is there are going to be notes in our file about exactly, what you were told at that point. We can just review those.
All right, yeah. Unfortunately, time's getting to me and I gotta go.
Okay, that's fine, right? So, check back in, right? And we'll try to get you the right instructions. When are you doing a physical?
Great. I don't have it scheduled yet, so it's not.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
not,
All right. So just before you plan, before you plan the next one, make sure you have somebody run that scenario by them real fast, and have them look back in your records to say, how did I do this last time? What are the file names? Just so you know.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right. You're welcome.
Bye.
Okay. All right. So if there aren't any other questions, that was pretty specific, right? I'm going to stop this recording. Go ahead and put it on the hopper to get it emailed out to everyone. If you have further questions, don't hesitate to call in, right, to service to get scheduled to talk to a trainer or tech, or you can email your question. We'll try to answer it. And if you don't have your physical inventory instruction sheet and you want it, let us know that as well. All right. Thanks for paying attention. Right. And we'll see you on the next webinar. Thanks.